They eat something, they drop it, the other one picks it up, bites from it, gives it back. It's this, honestly, it's this beautiful community.
Today we're going to talk about what I call the fallacy of safety. And this has come about because, we are in 2022 now. We're basically 2 years past the whole pandemic thing, right? And yet we still live under this cloud of fear and this idea that we still need to treat each other basically like if we're lepers sometimes. And it's kind of just heartbreaking for me. I reject the whole notion of wanting to go back to, of going to a new normal. I reject that notion. My new normal is going back to pre-2020 normal. That's my normal. If somebody's not okay with that, that's fine. That's your choice. This is how I'm choosing to. There's just this cloud and idea now hanging over us that when somebody within your circle even shows a symptom of sickness, it could be allergies, it could be a cough or whatever, you immediately have to quarantine from that person for 10 days for the safety of everyone else. Please, stay away, or this or that. And I just, especially as Christian people, I just don't see that. I don't see where Christians are called to be risk averse, to have this aversion to risk. I don't see that at all. I'm not saying that. I get it. Jesus touched lepers, Jesus did that, and people say, well, that was Jesus. Pre-2020, I remember having this group of friends in California, and if one of our kids got sick and we had plans to meet together, we would call each other up and be like, hey, listen, my kid got sick. This is what happened. It's been this long since that happened. Usually for us, it was well, has it been 24 hours since they had a fever? 24, 48 hours. Take your pick, depending on the family we were speaking to. What are they currently symptoms? And most of the time, if there was no fever and it had been a few days, it was nah, we don't care, still come over. Because we understood, yes, we understood there was risk. But we also understood we live in a fallen world. We live in a world where there's still disease, there's still sickness, there's still that, but life has to continue. And life, for a believer, for a Christian, is about community. And you need that. And it really is tough when you live in a state of well, I don't even know what I'm allowed to do right now because I don't want to step on somebody's toes or whatever. So it's one of those things that's it's been really stirring in my heart, and this whole idea of man, we treat each other like we're carrying the Ebola virus sometimes, or we treat each other in some very negative ways. I'll get a dry throat and I'm afraid to cough in a restaurant, or I'm afraid to cough at a supermarket because then I get looks. It's in my top 3 definite things that I absolutely abhor and dislike about what this whole pandemic thing did to us as a society. It just made us so untrusting of one another. It divided us completely. If you're for the jab, anti-jab. If you're for mask, anti-mask. I know some people have discussed that. It's well, I know that technically we're kind of past it. Should you still wear a mask if you show symptoms of a fever? Why? We never did that before. I don't know if people understand how the body works, but you breathe in molds and viruses and stuff constantly. And your body, naturally, the way God designed it, fights them off, okay? And then there's those rare occasions where you get sick a couple times a year, whether a cold or a flu or whatever, and then guess what your body does? Your body does what God designed it to do. It either, when you get a fever, your body temperature rising is killing the virus. When you get a cold and you're coughing and you're phlegmy. You're phlegmy and all that, and you're coughing all that stuff up, your body is getting rid of all the gunk. That's how God designed our bodies. And what do? In our household, rest, fluids, healthy, good food. Supplement. That's what we do. But again, you get a cold, after 3 days, I might be completely good, except that I have this lingering cough.
About 2 or 3
this lingering
weeks
cough
usually.
That's going to stick around for 2 weeks. I'm not contagious. I'm not sick anymore. But I just have this cough that won't go away. So what does that mean? That because a good percentage of people are still scared, I have to seclude myself like that? How does that make sense at all? And how do you explain that to a 3-year-old? Oh no, we can't go to these places because we might make people feel uncomfortable. I'm at the point where it's if you feel uncomfortable, then you stay home and you live in a bubble, but I'm gonna go live my life because as a Christian, I use wisdom. If my friend called me up and said, dude, I've been throwing up all day, go ahead and come over. I'm not going to their house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use caution and wisdom at that moment. But my friend calls me and says, bro, I know we're supposed to hang out. Listen, I had the flu. It's been 24 to 48 hours. I don't have it anymore. I, as an adult, can assess and make a decision knowing that the consequences of that decision will fall firmly on me. So if I decide to go and I still get sick, it's not his fault. It's mine.
It's nobody's fault, really. It's the virus. That's just kind of how it works.
And the reality is that it's impossible to live in this world without ever getting sick. Whether it's a common flu or whether it's somebody like my good friend Owen who's sick with cancer, or my good friend Carrie who's also sick with cancer, or other people that I know that have gotten sick with different things. We live in a fallen, sin-filled world, and disease and sickness is part of it. Do we use caution and wisdom? Sure, but not at the expense of completely alienating from one another.
It's very interesting to me that what the world would see as maybe some of the sickest people, cancer fighters, autoimmune diseases, those types of things. We have a very close friend of ours, my husband's actual boss. He's also immunocompromised because he's paraplegic. He's in a wheelchair. These people aren't afraid. And in some regard, they've faced death, and God has given them an opportunity to live out their life here on earth for now. And they're not afraid. When we talk about some of the friends that we've had in California, hey, we got sick, X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, let's get together. Let's gather. Our good friend, as he mentioned, Owen, in the thick of sickness, we were still getting together. And that would not have changed if we hadn't separated states that we live in. We would still be gathering right now. My sister has an autoimmune disease, a lung disease called sarcoidosis. The whole time of the pandemic, some of the people that I visited closely with were people who were really, really sick.
I think what I'm about to say is probably more addressed to people who claim to know the Lord, to claim to be saved. I don't think the Lord calls us to alienating one another. I don't think the Lord calls us to live a life of fear. No, I don't think the Lord calls us to, and this is coming from someone who has struggled with fear his entire life. Fear was my constant friend and enemy throughout most of my life. Yet, one of the things that was so liberating for me about this whole pandemic thing, was that it liberated me from a lot of that, because I understood that this is life. I could skate free from never having gotten this thing, and then I could walk outside my house, walk down to go get my mail, and get a heart attack and die. Even though I never got it, my life still ended. I am not advocating and saying that you can't use wisdom, but can we at least get to a point where we can treat each other as like adults that can make wise decisions, instead of treating each other like, man, you're some leper that I have to stay away from? Because it's disheartening, I think. It's sad. You still want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. If it makes you feel safer, sure, go ahead. You want to get the jab and live with whatever consequences or repercussions come from getting one of those,
or not, whatever happens. Yeah, whatever
happens, that's your choice, and I respect that. And as an adult, I respect the fact that you made that decision, and I respect the fact that you will use judgment in the things that you do. Then respect the other side. Respect the fact that you're dealing with people who are using judgment and wisdom as you are. You used it in one direction, we're using it in another. Can we treat each other that way?
Yeah.
That's what I want to get back to. The way we treated each other pre-2020. I want to, as much as possible, get away from what I call the fallacy of safety. It's impossible to live safe-free in this world. It's just utterly impossible. We live in a world that's constantly at war with you, especially if you're a Christian. And we live in a world where things happen all the time. Tornadoes, earthquakes, famine, hunger, hurricanes, death, viruses, different things, sicknesses. It's just the reality of our world. And I'm not trying to be morbid and sad about it. It's not possible to live a life without risk. The second that I wake up in the morning, there's risk involved in my life. I could be walking down the stairs, slip, and crack my neck. I could be driving down the road and not paying attention, or someone else is not paying attention, and they sideswipe me or hit me or whatever, and something could happen. There's risk.
We are called to commune with one another, to have community. And if every single person within the community chose to stay away every single time one of their family members or themselves were sick, you wouldn't have community. And truly, these conversations have come up because our children we've had to talk to our children. God calls us to have childlike faith, because our children, they're not fearful like we are. Now, granted, there's because we understand cause and effect, and maybe them not so much. But I charge you to have the childlike faith today and use our children as an example. They are not afraid to go and hug another one of their friends at the park, regardless of if they know each other or not, whether they have snot running down their nose. They eat something, they drop it, the other one picks it up, bites from it, gives it back. It's this, honestly, it's this beautiful community. Petri dish of bunch of germs, but you know what? And I get it, they get sick, but they also walk away having had a great time. And I think that we, as Christians specifically, need to make sure that we are evaluating what God has called us to do, specifically what Scripture has called us to do, and not the medical professionals.
You know, this is a topic that's very much like been burning in my heart for a while now. I'm not here to cast judgment on either side. All I'm here is to say let's get to a point where we can treat each other like responsible adults that can use wisdom, understand that it's not possible. Again, it's not possible to live in this world and be risk-free. It's just not. Jesus said, in this life you will have trial and tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And for the believer, that's what we rest in. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, you can leave a comment below. For those of you that know me personally and want to have some more dialogue about this, and you have my number, hit me up. I'm not afraid or against having good dialogue. I won't argue, but I'll have good dialogue.
I'll argue.